Genki Genki 18, 19, 21. These are movies in a series directed by Daikichi Amano, who specializes in aquatic-themed imagery and porn. His photography is breathtaking, however, his movies seem to be just skin deep. There's only so many ways you can watch women inappropriately handle aquatic life. Verges on disgusting when he brings out the cockroaches and starts sticking frogs in places they should never be. They're porn, is what I'm trying to say. I was keen on giving up because, frankly, I'm over the disturbing movie Iceberg and I'm shit at long-haul content, but there's at least one person that pops up every month to ask me if I'm ever going to finish the tier list, and I feel obligated now. It needles at the back of my mind that I haven't finished this shit, so here, take it and stop whinging. It quaked me to my very core to find an actual movie in this tier, one that's been submitted to film festivals. Released in 2017, Kuso dances between humor, horror, and repulsive imagery. The logline goes as follows: Kuso explores America's dark history through the lens of the aftermath of a devastating earthquake in Los Angeles. There's a lot of poop involved. I wouldn't say I personally liked this movie, but there were horror segments that I thought were cool and moments that made me laugh. Considering the subject matter, I have to assume the budget was low, but what they managed to do with that was impressive. The directing credits for this one literally just say Steve, but his actual name is Stephen Bingy Ellison. He's a rapper who goes by the name Flying Lotus, or Flylo. He actually has a pretty big following, and you know what? His music slaps. Runtime 92 minutes. Hannibal Buress is in this movie. Oh, and Jimmy Screamer Claus is in this. Remember him? He directed Where the Dead Go to Die. Anders Holm was as well, you know, the guy who does those buddy comedies with Adam Devine. Quite a few people walked out of the screening of this one. Steve disputed this and stated only like 20 people walked out, which, come on, Steve, that's still a lot. This movie is made up of a series of shorts. The synopsis for the first one is as follows, and I believe it gives you a good idea of what to expect. Missy and Kenneth are lovers who live in an apartment complex. On their first appearance, Missy is seen choking Kenneth as he masturbates, then singing him to sleep. However, Missy covers her neck with a cloth and refuses to let Kenneth perform sexual acts on her. Kenneth attempts to play the piano for her to sing, but another voice joins them. Missy finally removes the cloth to reveal a talking boil on her neck. After initial revulsion, the boil talks Kenneth into letting it perform fellatio on him. He agrees, and they do so. Afterward, Kenneth responds in pleasure, having learned to enjoy the boil's presence, and names it Royal. No Vaseline, The Great Porn Swindle. Directed by Marco Madia, released in 2013, I saw some comparisons online to Lucifer Valentine, and this is definitely a dip into an online culture I had no idea existed. Piss play, vomit play, fellatio, just a lot of the same. This movie seems to be revered among their tight-knit little community. People hold it up as one of the best of his films. Kuso Milk 1-4, directed by Yoshina Ganja. Nice. Release dates range from 2002 to 2010. 2 girls, 1 cup, plus a smidge of schoolgirl fantasy and a lot of milk enemas. Yeah. Literally all the movies could be mixed into one. I don't see a unique quality for any of them other than a movie-length runtime, but with absolutely no underlying reason as to why I know this, JAV films tend to run the length time of Hollywood movies, so that's normal. One of the websites I found a copy on was called ScatFap, and oh no, that just makes me happy. Can't find jack shit on this movie. I have one list of movies where one of the actresses has been in, otherwise I don't know anything about this movie. The director does not exist online. I have names and dates, and that's it. UNKB 2. Scat porn. Channel 309. Just kidding. UNKB 2, directed, written by, and starred in by Sergi A. Runtime is 14 minutes. Fun fact, this movie was thought to be lost until it was discovered accidentally in an abandoned theater, but for real though, it is just scat porn. Like, we the audience have the perspective of the director's hand and he records, which seems to be a fetish in itself if these movies are anything to go by. Channel 309. Whew. Oh boy, I fell down a rabbit hole with this one. Directed by Marco Madia, black and white trip through porn, violence, no dialogue. The film depicts a few episodes of intense sexual violence, forced sexual acts, genital mutilation, etc. Runtime is 60 minutes. There's conflicting sources on that. Released in 2014, again conflicting sources. No dialogue, just porn, and some demonic imagery. The director seems to be the head of a, quote, artistic pornographic label, VLF Laboratories, which I've never thought of existing, but of course it exists. But also, sus. He also produces music under the alias Zero Gravity Toilet. I took a listen to some of his music, and it's, experimental, alright. I had to turn it off pretty quickly. Picture 25 straight minutes of just the sound of a CD skipping, and I am not kidding. I wrote that portion ages ago, went back to double check, and I can no longer find the music I referenced. It's as though he purged the internet of anything relating to it. I found another album he completed and uploaded, which takes a vastly different turn. A definitely softer sound and more marketable than I would expect from this guy. Very interesting. I got into noise music a while ago, which I guess his music would be classified as, or maybe industrial. Noise music is not commercial in the slightest, except for its occasional use as soundtracks in movies. A couple of years ago I would have found it senseless and an affront to the eardrums, but lately, I don't know. I find some peace in the chaos. So much of music strives to have a recognizable pattern or to be palatable to the masses, and noise music seems to just serve to disturb you, to be unpredictable and entirely creative without an attempt to be appealing. I can definitely find some appreciation in the genre, and I see some things in this guy's stuff that shows promise, but ultimately doesn't speak to me. If you're looking for noise music to dip your toes, because I don't want this guy's discography to give you a bad vibe, I've been following Ryosuke Kiyasu for a while. I dig his unhinged fuckery. Boris has a lot of good stuff, and Poppy has an album called Screamed that I actually really dig. My favorite is Scream with 3 M's. The last time this guy was online was 2015 on his Facebook, since been purged, which he almost exclusively used to promote his company and projects. He had a blog spot, since deleted, which pinged a post in 2021 on the Wayback Machine, though won't pull up now, so if I were to guess, Marco deleted his blog somewhere around that time. All other posts look to be promoting his music, except there's more. When going to the VLF website, scrolling some, you can find some further information about Channel 309, some scathing reviews that seem odd to promote on the movie's parent company website, and a small blurb. So small I almost missed it. To close this first selection, we announced that the biological conglomerate previously known as Marco Madia is faded into a new time-space entity recognized as Reverend Meti Ajahn Ra, Fekfati II. A quick Google search of the name reveals a whole slew of new results. His Facebook under the new name promotes VLF Laboratories and some kind of new project titled Q309 Network. He promoted his book in 2018. The preface reads, "In this book, we describe a segment of the activities of the VLF Laboratories, the series Channel 309, the definitive step to the permanent revolution that has given birth to the Q309 network. Our work with the body, our techniques, our aesthetic, are treated in this visual grimoire with our usual style, a revolt against the logical deterministic thinking, a negation of every discursive communication, and the use of images as the method of I-ic communication. Starting with the work of the flesh, we have recognized 2 ways. The first one to maintain the tradition and all his dialectical side, a sterile approach who leads only to words and speculation. The second one is the way of the destructor, the flesh of the beast, who explores the reversion of the creative process. One aim of this current, is to destroy the keeper of every traditional approach, the stupidity of a short-sighted approach. We are the revolt against the traditional world. We are Gnosis and Action. L'Chaim 309. I found an interview with Fekfati by Cult Nation in which he talks about his relationship to porn. I find your work refreshing, as I've always found appeal in sexual content of horror movies rather than mainstream porn. Do you see your work as more ritual than pornography? Is this more of a version of anti-porn? What does the term dysfunctional porn mean to you? Pornography, since it showed a commercial value, has lost the nature of the origins, and has become a mere genre whose sole purpose is the onanastic activities of the ordinary user. Our dysfunctionality is this: to not concede anything to the masturbatory gesture in favor of scoptophilia in itself. You cannot make a ranking of importance between the various elements that make up the project. Anti-porn is paradoxically the commonly understood commercial porn. Mine is the true porn, in intention and attitude. The adoration of death is a common theme in your work. Do you see this darker imagery as more of an invocation to the shadow self? We do not invoke anything but ourselves. Death is an omnipresent element in life, such as sex, hunger, or any other bodily function. This is what we celebrate without invoking it. We are death. We simply highlight this element sometimes. So, okay, let me see if I can explain this concept. This new project seems to be the concept of sexuality within the context of spirituality. It appears to be a somewhat kind of religion without the God, or the God is our bodies. So each of these projects, Channel 309 included, are episodes in a sense. Quite literally, the intention is to make porn representing it as Fekfati sees it. Operation has resumed since writing this, and they have plenty of projects on their site now, so you can go look at it and see for yourself. Major trigger warning. So I genuinely don't know what to make of this one. It's certainly an interesting concept that porn in the Western sphere has become convoluted and, I guess, tainted sexuality. I don't fully understand the director's intentions. How he speaks in interviews and posts come off as almost pretentious and certainly overcomplicated to get his point across. I'm caught between thinking this is a really cool concept, which it is, and thinking the director is severely mishandling how he gets his point across, which he is. Look, there's definitely discussion to be had on the current state of the porn industry and how we as a society view sex. I just don't think this guy has any artistic value behind what he creates. But that's subjective. I mean, it seems like he genuinely just wants to make videos of himself fucking and being violent towards faceless and nameless women. You can use a lot of big words to try and convince people that you're deep, but at the end of the day, tell it like it is. You wanted to get your pee-pee hard. The marketing is so underground, I think you would really have to know what you're looking for to find this, which indicates to me just a caterance to a very specific audience. The imagery is cool, but alongside the scat porn, well... Vomit Enema Ecstasy 1 and 2, directed by some guy named Tojiro, who made a shit ton of porn in Japan. Like, this guy made so much porn that at one point his boss banned him from making any for a year and said, go fix your porn-addicted brain. Like, god damn. I hate this game. The only Google results that come up for this are scat porn sites, dude. It's exactly what it sounds like. I don't know. The Motel Files and Other Random Cuts. Released in 2014 by our boy Marco Madia. Duration 20 minutes. Again, just pornographic depravity. Cuts between black and white and color. A round lens has been fitted over the camera to give the effect of the viewers being a peeping Tom. Music that is quite literally just noise or deafened with the sound of heartbeats. There's a bit where a guy extracts his own semen from a vagina with a teaspoon and then makes her eat it. Anal fisting, scat, etc. Maladia's signature is the use of masks on all of his actors, a point he makes very intentionally to strip his actors of personification and uniqueness. KT Trilogy, or KT 602, 606, and 610. Released in 2009, duration 1 hour and 11 minutes for 602, 1 hour 26 for 606, and 1 hour and 43 minutes for 610. The actual name and director are unknown. There's no title screen, no credits, even the name KT isn't its actual name, it's just the nickname derived from the inscription along the DVD. This one was incredibly difficult to find information on. There's only one blog spot I could find, which was originally posted in French. Luckily, the poster was pretty detailed in its contents, so I didn't have to download a rip from some shady the Russian porno site, basically Japanese lesbian BDSM with needles. Segments include sewing body parts together. This one, I think I'm being conditioned or some shit, because I was looking at screen caps from this entry and I almost found it beautiful. Or maybe it's because of this specific content material, because I did have a skin sewing phase for a brief period. It's a pretty niche type of body modification, and I won't show pictures of it, but you get the idea. Sadie Scream Volume 1 to 5. All of these were directed by different people. Runtime is at least an hour for all of them. Someone said sequels or parodies to the Saw movies, which after further research rings true. Everyone for the second one just talks about him sticking a screwdriver in the girl's private parts to fish out something previously left there by another man. Picture violence against women, but more sexual than guinea pig. And if you aren't going to watch these movies, I at least encourage you to read reviews posted about them, because they are hilarious. Seeing all these people as equally drained as me feels a lot like trauma bonding. So, okay, the reason I was gone for a while was because I moved to Australia to attend film school in Queensland. Needless to say that I am an artsy type. I do find a lot of enjoyment in porn, and my earlier short film projects strayed towards abstract, which is why I'm so disappointed in these movies, because they should have been right up my alley. Maybe I'm just a poser. Squirmfest or Purge, released in 1989, directed by Susumu Segusa. He changed his name to Kauria Dachi. The IMDb for this one literally just says, a woman is held hostage and forced to eat insects and feces. Jesus fucking Christ. Enemas and eating worms, but then she mixes roaches, worms, maggots, and her own urine in a blender and drinks it. Oh my fucking God. Fucking Christ, what the fuck is wrong with these men? What the fuck is wrong with these people? What the fuck is going on? It's all this. Why the fuck are they all so depraved? What's wrong with how do you get these kinks? Yeah. Shinitai desu ka? Echi shiyose. Chichi kurase. That's funny. Death to Kafar. Death to Kafar, which means death to those who deny the existence of God. So take a wild guess what this one is. Came out in 2008, and I can't find the director, but I assume it's someone involved in an extremist organization or some dude that lives in his mom's basement. An uninterrupted parade of beheadings, disembowelments, assassinations by firearms, and other monstrosities carried out by the soldiers of Allah. This one is only 17 minutes long, but look, I'm not watching this shit. If I'm not already on a list somewhere at the USA headquarters, then this will definitely fucking put me there. In looking for information on this movie, I found a review that said predictable plot with forgettable performances. And look, it turned out to be for a different movie, but can you imagine? Sounds like this one is just a bunch of terrorist propaganda aimed to scare foreigners away. The first clip is of the Twin Towers attack, and then there's a series of beheadings and the occasional shooting. You guys are a bunch of sick fucks, for real. Fucking degenerates. Literally spamming all the subreddits with DM me the link, please, and the occasional religious argument. Like, shut the fuck. You know, I grew up pretty sheltered. Like, evangelical, my parents prohibited secular music, and unmitigated internet surfing sheltered. But I've always been a big fan of the darker aspects of the world, like heavy metal, horror movies. Oh, and I had, like, really bad intrusive thoughts. But TikTok gets confused about what intrusive thoughts are. They aren't random, harmless acts. Intrusive thoughts imagine you doing horrific things or having horrific things done to you, and it's usually a revelation to people who have them that they aren't evil. That I don't actually want to be having these thoughts. I think the point of intrusive thoughts is that it appeals to what would scare you the most, what would be the worst possible thing for you to think about or want to think about. I used to feel really bad about it. I prayed a lot, but praying actually became this obsessive, damaging thing for me, so I cut that out. One thing I did find to help is not to shy away from the thoughts, let them play out. Maybe if they're obsessive enough, I can use them as inspiration. It became such that I was excited to have a nightmare or fucked up thought because it served as something I could paint a picture out of, which just means my art, my writing is pretty fucked up, and people generally don't understand that this wasn't indicative of who I am, but rather just an expression of what's going on internally. And it doesn't mean I'm a bad person. Art's supposed to be expression. It's not always supposed to be pretty. Reddit user SnooGadgets2657, in the ever-growing prominence of snuff films by Samantha Acevedo, said, "I've had suicidal thoughts since I was 8 years old and have romanticized the idea of death. Watching gore videos is a way of scaring me away from the idea of death. Watching mangled corpses and shocking scenes scares me away from my suicidal thoughts and reminds me of how bloody and gruesome death really is. Other people use this kind of content to prevent themselves from hurting actual people. I Go Commit Self-Die from the same article says, I like watching gore videos because they help stop me from actually hurting somebody. I have really bad intrusive thoughts. Gore videos remind me that death isn't pretty. Did you know, in America, it isn't actually illegal to own or watch any content except CP? So legally, the people in these subreddits are just fine. Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act of 1996 leaves it up to the discretion of platforms to decide what contents to allow on their sites. It even provides these sites immunity for what third-party users might post on their platform. It states no provider or user of an interactive computer service shall be treated as the publisher or speaker of any information provided by another information content provider, though this doesn't apply to any federally illegal material like copyright infringement or CP. There's even a debate about whether there's a demand for snuff films. Urban legends suggest somewhere on the dark web sits sites dedicated to producing and distributing snuff films for degenerates to rub one off to. If allowed, then wouldn't that create a demand? Hell, Faces of Death from Tier 6 of this iceberg was so popular that it inspired sequels and rip-offs galore. Between this and debating the actual definition of snuff film, no one seems to have an answer. The actual definition of snuff film, by the way, is a type of film that shows or purports to show scenes of actual homicide. And according to most sources, there's never been an actual snuff film, at least in the sense of a company filming a murder with the intent to distribute for financial gain. But even this gets muddled, because murders have been recorded and distributed for shock value, propaganda, and self-gratification. Take a look at Luca Magnotta, the murderer who filmed One Lunatic, One Ice Pick, in which he films himself murdering and dismembering a man named Jun Lin. But in Magnotta's case, the thing he had to gain was fame. People argue that there isn't a demand for snuff film, but go to any of these subreddits and search through the comments. You'll find that just isn't true. People like watching this shit. There used to be subreddits and popular websites dedicated to gore. Every piece of evidence suggests Magnotta filmed Jun Lin's murder for the exact purpose of people watching it. And we gave him what he wanted because we watched that video. I watched that video. So is there really no incentive to filming and distributing snuff films? I wanted to open the discussion. At what point do we draw the line? Are we accessories by even clicking those links? When I was 12 years old, my youth pastor sat all his kids down and he cut off a piece of tape. He stuck the tape to his pants, pulled it off, and handed it to one of my peers and told him to do the same and to pass the tape along. By the time the tape got to me, it wouldn't stick anymore, but I still passed it along. At the end of the line, my pastor took the tape back, and he told us, "This tape represents you, and for every relationship you have, every time you have sex with someone, you lose a bit of your stickiness. It becomes harder and harder to form meaningful relationships because of all of the times before where you gave yourself away." The obvious analogy is problematic, and I wonder at the morality of teaching children that they are objects that can be defiled, but I also think back on that analogy and compare it to other aspects of my life, and I wonder how much of it is true when I watch these movies and I find myself increasingly desensitized, because surely my mom would watch any one of these and the images would be burned into her eyes, but to me they're just another video. Thich Nhat Hanh, in the heart of Buddha's teachings, encourages us to touch our suffering. You can't understand something if you hide from it. So, I watch disturbing movies and horror movies because I have anxiety, and subconsciously I think I've always wanted to understand the things that make me afraid or disgusted. But I think when I lean over the pool to dip my hand in, I often lose my balance and completely submerge myself, and then forget that a whole world exists outside of the suffering. Initially, I'm angry. I'm angry at the crowds of people who want to watch. I'm angry at the ones who film the degradation of women. I'm angry at myself for being unable to overcome my curiosity, but after my anger subsides, I have a thought. I've been working on mindfulness and learning to see my anger for what it is, a secondary emotion brought on by something else. Maybe it's projection. Maybe we're all just one and the same, curious and prone to becoming a drop in a tidal wave.